Hiya, welcome back to part two. We're looking at the 2024 pre-release material for paper two. My projector has now calmed down. It's turned itself off. I reckon it got overheated and was trying to cool itself down, but my word, it went crazy. So we're on to page three, looking at graph two. It says graph two, proportion of the 22.6 million UK music premium subscription accounts by streaming service. This is January 2020. So a few comments I've got about this graph is we've got a bar chart. It's going from left to right. We've got Spotify, Amazon Music Prime, Apple. We've got 44% for Spotify, 25 for Apple Music. So that makes 50. So that's 94% of that all in one go. 4% for Google, and then 1% Deezer, 1% SoundCloud. Tidal, Napster, and other. There's three of those. They're all 0%. So comments on this would probably be I'd be suggesting that perhaps these percentages could have gone to one or two decimal places because we've got Deezer and SoundCloud that are both at 1%. We've got Amazon and Apple that are both at 25%, and it's tough to differentiate which one's greater than which. So I'd have said increase those decimal places so that we could see or compare them, because at the moment it looks like we've got a tie for second, and that might not be the case. Also, why are we showing Tidal and Napster when they're 0% as well as the other? Maybe if they combined them, they could have got to 1%, but we don't know because we don't have enough data. So they're the comments that I'm thinking about with this. So on to what I think some questions could look like. I've got here question 5. How many of the 22.6 million UK music premium subscription accounts are to Google? And you could take this bit, go from there, and then have a look at graph 1 to then calculate exactly how many daily active and weekly actives they would have actually. So you could from graph 2 calculate the amount and then go back to graph 1 and then split it into daily and weekly. That's something I've not considered until this moment, so something for you to think about. But pause the video and have a go at question 5 and then hit play when you want to see what I do with it. Okay, so again, this is all percentage based. I'm a bit worried I'm too percentage heavy here, but we've got 22.6 million, and that's going to be multiplied by that 4%, which is multiplying it by 0.04. 22.6 times by 0.04, that gives us 0.904. So that means they've got 904,000 subscriptions to Google. Okay, now they may also, because at the bottom it says, they talk about VAT and they talk about the standard subscription, so they may apply that as well to say, well, how much from that 904,000, how much money are they making, which would be a times by 9.99, subtract that value times by the 1.67, which is their quoted amount for the VAT. Question 6, what is the lower and the upper bounds of each streaming service? Now, bounds I've seen on paper 1. I wouldn't be surprised if they snuck it onto paper 2, but we need to talk about the upper and lower bounds. So I will let you pause that video and then hit play when you're ready to mark it. Okay, so I'm going to try S for Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Google, Deezer. I'm not going to do SoundCloud because they'll be the same, but I will do Napster. I'm not going to do Tidal because I'm a kid who remembers Napster for their music streaming services back in the day. So the lower bound, we have to assume that these are to the nearest whole number. So 43.5 to 44.5. So lower bound, upper bound. And then actually all you need to do is add half and take away a half. Let me just explain why that is though. So if we've got 44% to the nearest whole number, that is to the nearest 1. So nearest 1. And then if you divide that by 2, that makes 0.5, and that's what you add and subtract to each of the values. So adding gives you the upper bound and subtracting gives you the lower bound. So 0.5 is the value that we're adding on here. Google would make 3.5 and 4.5, and then Deezer 0.5 to 1.5. Now, interestingly, the Napster one, the upper bound is technically 0.5. The lower bound will still be 0 because they could have no percent. They can't have negative 0.5%. That would not make sense. And again, these inequalities would be like that if we were to put the inequalities in. So it can be equal to the lower bound, but it can't be equal to the upper bound because the upper bound would therefore have it rounding up to a different number. All right, people, that's question 6 done. Diagram 1. So I think I've got 1, 2. We've got 3 more questions. Hopefully this is useful. Do comment if it is useful. I love to hear from people watching these videos. Diagram 1 is an almighty crazy flowchart. So diagram 1 says allocation of revenues from music streaming after VAT. And I'm finding it quite difficult to read all these words. You must take some time just to prepare and read what's going on. So the music gets streamed. It looks like the streaming service takes between 30 to 34%. And it does say all of these percentages are approximate. And then there's a route for recording and a route for publishing. So the recording route's like the top route, and 55% of the money goes there. And then there's like royalty rates and everything. And the recording artists will get 16.5. And it says that there's 2% for legacy contracts and 20 to 30% are royalty rates. And it's very, very complicated. Going down the bottom route, there's publishing. So there's like a mechanical section. It splits after publishing, which is 15%. Splits after that. MCPS, not really sure what that means, but I reckon that is down below, which is the Mechanical Copyright Protection Society. They take 7.5%. So there's a lot of money coming out of these revenues. And then the songwriter or composer on the top strand gets 6.75% and 3.75% of that bottom end. And in total, between the recording artist, the songwriter, and the composer, they get 27% of that income. Okay, so how could this be asked? Again, more percentage work. Let's say a recording artist received £25,000. How much did the songwriter and composer receive? So pause the video, have a little go at it, and then hit play when you're ready to see what I've done. Okay, so what we've got here, I'm just flicking between screens, so I want to make sure that we're still recording, which we are. We've got the recording artist will receive 16.5%. So X is multiplied by 0.165, which is 16.5% as a decimal. And then when that's multiplied, that will give us 25,000. So we need to use some reverse percentages in order to find out what that original amount was. So 25,123 divided by 0.165. And that gives us a crazy number, 15. 15. How crazy is that? Then that value, we will then multiply by not 6.75%, but 6.75 plus the 3.75. So that could be an important bit for working. 6.75 plus 3.75. That gives us 10.5%. So the answer times by 10.5%. So answer times by, and I've got to do it the other way around. That gives me 159. That's not right. I've multiplied by 10.5. It needs to be 0.105. Get it right, Lloyd. 15. So that is £15,909. And then rounding it to 2 decimal places, 9 pence. So we've used a bit of reverse percentages, and then we've used some percentage of amounts. Question 8. How much did the streaming service receive when the recording artist received £25,000? So again, pause this video, have a go, and then hit play when you want to mark it. Okay, so I could use, can I use what I just did? Yeah, so the recording artist, so this is going to be another 15.15. I'm going to leave it there. So that value has come from the 25,000 divided by the 0.165, which is to go backwards from where the recording artist has their amount back to the total amount. Now, the streaming service, you may be asked to do this and you may have to make an assumption. So you're going to multiply between 0.3 to 0.34. And then whatever you've done there, you'll get it right. So I'm just putting in 1515. I don't know why I'm taking a while to do that. So if I multiply it by 0.3, we get £45,454.55. If we were to do that by 0.34 instead, we're getting to £51,515.15. Okay, on to that last question. What is the total revenue when the artist received £25,000? We've actually already answered that, so I'm not going to make you pause the video. That is the 151,515.15. So that's just a very quick reverse percentages question. And that's it for me. That's the prelim material looked at. I hope this has been useful. I hope it's been good for you to just look at some questions that could come up. If they do come up in your exam, then happy days. Do put a comment on saying you were right. And well, good luck with your exams. Please do consume as much of that 2A, 2B, 2C content that you can. Just seeing those answers responded will help. I've had a few people say, have you got a list of topics that could come up for paper 2? Speak to your teachers, they will have that, but look at those past papers because they don't change that much. There's just subtle differences, and there's a lot of things that come up, such as on 2A, confidence intervals almost always comes up in one way or another. So do make sure that you understand what comes up on your paper, and good luck.